Hey, I finally got to see Call Me By Your Name from the director of I Am Love. That's his only film that I had seen up until this point, but after watching this movie, I've become a much bigger fan, and I'm actually a lot less mad that he's making the Suspiria remake. I think it's in much better hands with him than it was with David Gordon Green, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, if you don't know what Call Me By Your Name is, it is a gay coming of age film. Now, my fear going into this was that I've seen a lot of independent films and I've seen a lot of LGBT movies. One of my favorites is this Canadian film called Crazy. But I'm not a fan of all of these films that come out every year that are always proclaimed a masterpiece. Like Moonlight last year. I thought Moonlight was very overrated and obvious, and I don't think it did that much new. I'm not quite sure where they were acting as if it was groundbreaking. Um, but like I said, maybe it's how much exposure you have to this kind of stuff in cinema. And I like Brokeback Mountain, I really do. I like Ang Lee's film and I like how he directed it, but I really was just not looking forward to a melodrama about two gay characters wanting to stay together and somebody getting in the way. It's not like I'd have a problem seeing that. I've just seen it so many times. I don't know what they could have done that would have felt new. That's what was worrying me. What I didn't know is that this film isn't actually that way at all. It's more of a traditional coming of age film, kind of love story in the vein of an Eric Romer, who I'm a big fan of. So as soon as it started, I was like, oh, he's doing Romer, and that's awesome, especially his seasons series like Autumn and Summer. The movie stars Timothy Chalamet, who's having a great year with Lady Bird in this, and Armie Hammer. Armie Hammer's a student who comes to stay with Chalamet's family, in particular his father, Michael Schulberg. And he goes there to learn stuff about architecture, I guess, and history, stuff like that. They talk about a lot of things. Apparently, a student comes here every year and learns and moves on. And so as soon as Armie Hammer gets there, the movie has this sensuality to it. Immediate too. It has a tone and atmosphere due to the beautiful cinematography and the immaculate framing. This movie is the best framed movie of the year. I love every shot in this movie. It's beautiful. I mean, it's really it's painterly. Terrific work. It's just these still shots that could go on forever, and every image is just it's honestly perfectly rendered. And that's just one thing about this movie that I liked a lot, because this is one of my favorite movies of the year. It's not my favorite movie of the year, but it's right there at like the number 2 or 3 spot. There's some flaws with this film that I think hold it back from being a masterpiece, but it was almost a masterpiece, which is just as good. I mean, this film was almost perfect. I really do love this movie quite a bit. Let's talk about what's so good about it, because that's basically the plot. It's a kid trying to find himself on the edge of 17, going into 18, who he wants to be in his future, what kind of job he wants to have, what kind of life he wants to live, where he wants to live, how he wants to be seen by other people. He actually starts off having sex with women, which I liked quite a bit. I like that it didn't kind of have that thing where he only, kind of like Moonlight really bothered me with that the character had only had like one sexual interaction in his whole life, and it was with this other guy. I hated that seemed so unrealistic. This seemed more realistic from what I've had my gay friends tell me, to where and I'm not saying this is the same for everyone, but just you try to have sex with girls and you might even like it, but it's not really for you, and you're kind of fighting the whole gay thing, in particular being in 1983 and it's a different time. Now, one of the best things about this movie is that there isn't an antagonist. Nobody's trying to stop these two from getting together. And that's the thing I really like about the movie. But where the tension comes from, and what makes it interesting, is between the two of them. They almost set up a game for each other, a challenge. This is hardcore flirting, touching, rubbing. What's genius about this in comparison to so many other films that use homosexuality as a means to tell a story is that this film doesn't focus so much on the fact that they're gay as much as it focuses on just the raw sexuality and attraction. You could see this being done with two women, or a man and a woman, in either role. It wouldn't matter. You could see Armie Hammer being played by a woman. You could see Timothy Chalamet being played by a woman. The film is universal. It's not just about, oh, well, because of their love being this way, they can't have it. It's not really that. It kind of is. But in particular, it's more about when you're young and you really fall in love for the first time, and those feelings you feel for the first time, and how you need to enjoy them because they're rare and they don't happen too often, and you're really never going to feel those feelings as powerfully again. You're never going to be so passionate about thinking about someone and longing to be with someone, because the first time you feel a lot of things, heartbreak and all that, when you're young, the emotions are new to you, so they're fresh, and they're more painful, but that's what makes them more beautiful. What I love besides the wonderful cinematography and framing, the soundtrack. This is the best soundtrack of the year, hands down. It's not even close for me. I mean, this it's almost like it was made for me. I mean, a musician I love composed the music. They have Bach pieces in here. They have my favorite Bach piece in this movie. They have Psychedelic Furs playing "Love My Way," which is a song I adore. I used to jam out to that in Grand Theft Auto Vice City. I mean, every song in this is killer. The classical pieces, like the Italian like disco poppy dance stuff. I mean, I gotta go buy the soundtrack. I like it as much as I like the movie, if not more. That blew me away. The performances. This is the best acted film of the year by far. Armie Hammer does his best work here since Social Network. This is a very relaxed performance. Now, one of my issues with the movie is the writing of that character. While I like Oliver, I am not a fan of how he seems a little bit too self-absorbed, or at least that he's a little bit inconsiderate of other people, only slightly. And they make that a plot point early on. He says later, and he says it in kind of a rude, blunt way. And Timothy Chalamet's character, Elio, he didn't like that. And it's just Armie Hammer's character throughout the whole movie. It's like it's always more about him than anyone else. Now, I get somewhat what they're trying to do. The way he looks physically and the way they light him and his body looks, it's almost like he's a Greek god or something you're not allowed to touch. I mean, they really make him statuesque. And it's a credit to his performance that he plays into that so well. And a brave and daring performance at that. I mean, some of the stuff they do in here. The director fetishizes male feet. He doesn't make it about penis and stuff like that. He doesn't really make it about, like the genitalia. He doesn't make it about their asses either. It's more about scenes where they rub feet on each other or give each other massages or cuddle with each other. I mean, there's parts where Timothy Chalamet jumps up on Armie Hammer and he's hugging him like a girlfriend would hug a boyfriend, like a really tiny girlfriend would jump up on a big guy, because Armie Hammer's like this big guy. But I really like his performance. I just felt like his character could have had a little bit more depth to him, because at the end there's this whole speech that Michael Schulberg gives that kind of sums up the whole movie, and it's honestly the best written scene in the movie. It's beautiful. It's beautifully acted. It's beautifully written. James Ivory wrote the screenplay, the great James Ivory, who's probably most famous for Howard's End, A Room with a View, Remains of the Day. Big fan of him. The screenplay has restraint, and that is incredible. Now, apparently the book this is based off originally had voiceover, and I do think that would have helped this movie. One of my issues is that it's all told so well visually. And it is. It's wonderfully told, but it's almost like you're missing a lot of detail and information that would flesh some of these things out. At least where we're at and when the story starts and where we're at the end of the story. And I think some voiceover could have helped the movie. Apparently it was in the original script, and there was more nudity. And James Ivory's actually argued with the director about the nudity, but that didn't bother me, because just getting hints of the nudity made it more sensual. Now, I'm not gay. I'm not saying I got like turned on seeing them, but it was just a movie that reminded you of those feelings when you're first flirting with someone and you're first touching someone and being playful, and you don't know how far you can go with certain things, and they're trying to kind of play these games off each other that the movie sets up and doesn't really fulfill the promise of that. I was disappointed with that. See, I thought this film was going to be Armie Hammer's character, who's older, introducing Timothy Chalamet's character to these new sexual things, these new experiments and things. And there's these moments, there's one moment in particular with fruit that I thought, wow, this is going to get really interesting. And they don't quite commit to it. They settle more for a love story that's a slice of life. How things that you have, when you're living them day to day, like you feel like you do in this movie, it honestly feels like you're on vacation while you're watching this film. It's a lot of people just, I mean, honestly, I can't tell you how many scenes in this film are just Timothy Chalamet laying out in swim trunks under the sun, or Armie Hammer, and that shot just goes on forever. I mean, there's a lot of that in this movie, and that's one of my problems, too, is the pacing. But there's a lot of stuff that goes back to Plato and the Symposium, I felt. All of the dialogue has subtext and meaning. It all adds another dimension to these things. I love that all the characters are intelligent. Timothy Chalamet's character in particular is very smart, and they talk about history and philosophy, and and music and art, and all sorts of things. The conversations are the kind of conversations you want to have with people, really engaging. The location shooting is gorgeous. Oh my god, every place they go shoot at looks terrific. So you have a perfect soundtrack, you have a perfect location, and you have beautiful cinematography. And in particular, and I already praised Armie Hammer, and Michael Schulberg is terrific too. This movie belongs to Timothy Chalamet, and he's getting the acclaim for a reason. This is a revelation. I did not know who this kid was. I've seen him in Lady Bird actually before this, and that was my first exposure to him. And I've seen him in interviews, and he seems like a really shy, sweet kid, which shocks me because the thing that impresses me about him as an actor is how confident he is. I haven't seen a performance this confident from a young actor in a long time. I mean, he completely demands the screen. In his physical acting, his facial acting, the way he talks. Armie Hammer says to him at one point, his character Oliver says, I like the way you say things. I like the way he said things. He's an engaging character. Making him intelligent was a genius stroke. And perhaps it's based off the real life of the writer of the novel. But it was genius because he has the wisdom from reading. He's so educated that he knows a lot of the things he's going through are just teenage emotions, but he can't fight his emotions and what he's going through and growing up. He can't help but deal with these things like a teenager, even though he has a mind that's beyond his years. So it's for us as an audience, when we're watching it, it's like watching somebody looking back at this moment and seeing it as more objectively for what it really was than what they were feeling it. But we're still seeing his feelings just from the acting, and it's such a natural performance that is so lively and just, I mean, the final shot of this movie is just on Chalamet's face for several minutes. I mean several minutes as the final song plays, and he saves all of his main emotional, what he really has, like that face he has, because he doesn't really give you a lot. He keeps a pretty stone-faced look throughout this. He doesn't want to budge for Oliver's character. He doesn't want to give in to him as much as he'd like to admit that he's just completely turned on and into this guy. He's trying to kind of fight that. He doesn't want to give him the edge, and that's where a lot of the excitement comes from the movie, is seeing them play off each other. But at the end, he just lets all of those emotions come out, and he shows just with his face the level of acting he can bring, and sadness and melancholy and just bittersweetness and looking, just appreciating it, because after the speech he gets from the father, which perfectly sets up the last scene, I won't spoil it, but it's essentially about how with time passing you get less and less opportunities to really have an experience like this or even feel certain things like this, and those opportunities go away, and you just get tired from trying so hard, for trying so hard to live a life that's more exciting, to love someone the way you want to love someone, like it is in books and movies. And the fact that you even get to have a friendship or a love or get to work on something that is that wonderful, you should just appreciate it for what it is, for the good and the bad. And I always like stories like that, because that's how I feel about life. I do feel like life is just a photo book of moments. And if you don't appreciate a moment when it's happening, you don't really embrace it, that this is happening right now, I'm doing this, you'll look back at it, and then it's just your version of that really happening. And it's never quite the same, and then you keep chasing that feeling again. Like, they call it chasing the high when you're trying to feel like you did the first time you get high, or you're always chasing that. You want to get those sensations again. It's always trying to get back to a feeling that's new. You're sick of feeling the same thing so much, and this character is feeling new things, and we're seeing him feel new things. There's a thing where he, like I said, where he gets with this girl for a little while, and that's a little cliche. It kind of just goes down the route where it's like, you know, oh, well, do you like me? Am I your girlfriend? Oh, I won't screw you over and all that. I didn't really dig that too much. It wasn't bad, but it was very cliche. A lot of this stuff was cliche coming of age stuff, just like Lady Bird was, where it's stuff I've seen 1,000 times. What separated this for me was the level of filmmaking and performance and all of those elements, the aesthetics, the thematic depth, all of that stuff elevated this above your typical coming of age film, because this is more of a coming of age film than it is just a gay romance. It is a love story. It does have some sex scenes. Not really, though. They don't really show anything, but there's, stuff's implied, which makes it better, honestly, in my opinion. It really just comes around to a slow burn of emotions that you feel underneath the surface, and the emotions come out more and more and more, until by the end you get an explosion of emotions that really overwhelm you and can bring you to tears. I could see that happening. I didn't get to that point, but I was always very moved by the movie. And like I said, any movie that plays psychedelic furs just is awesome. And those dance scenes with Armie Hammer are amazing. I just love the way that the director shot their, like, I can't explain their feet, their legs, their hands, their eyes. How beautiful they both look in this movie. How well lit they are is just amazing. It's iconic. It's iconic to see them. Just the way the grass looked, the trees looked, the sky looked. Everything looks so amazing. Seeing them ride bicycles and stuff like that. It felt like this time could go on forever, and yet it felt like it was all so immediate at the same time. It's like everything was happening so quick, and yet it has this deliberate, slow pace to it. The first hour of this movie is perfect. And if you would have asked me at the hour mark how I felt about this movie, I would have said it's a 10, and I would have said that it's the best film I've seen in a couple years. Unfortunately, the movie goes on beyond that. Here's what I think happened. I think the director, and I don't blame him for this, I think while he was making the movie, he realized he had something good. And that's what happens. This happens a lot when you make a great movie. And not that I've ever made a great movie, but when you hear stories about when a great movie's happening or when things are coming together, there's just kind of a feeling on the set when all of those pieces are coming together and you're like, oh, wow. Like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, they talk about Milos Forman. He just kind of knew things were working with Jack Nicholson and the rest of the cast and how they were doing the material. And he's like, we got a movie here. And you have too much of a good thing, you could screw it up. I feel like Iñárritu kind of did that with Birdman. Like, he was making Birdman and he realized how great it was, and he was like, oh man, I'm pulling this off. So then he tried to take it a little bit too far, and it almost hurt his movie, where he almost had like a perfect film. I think the director here realized Timothée Chalamet was so good, and that he was killing it in the performance of the year, and that the story was being perfectly translated through his eye, through his framing, through the tone that was being created. I think while he was making the movie on location with these actors, which I'm sure they did a lot of pre-production, but I think while he was making this movie and putting it together, he was realizing, like, wow, this is working, because it does. It works right away. I mean, from the first 5 to 10 minutes, you're already drawn in. And if you know movies, if you've seen a lot of international cinema, not just American cinema, you're going to appreciate a film like this, because this is really world-class filmmaking in a lot of ways. The elegance and subtlety here is something that's very masterly, that's very tough to do. And I remember that in his other film, I Am Love, that he could make something feel like a whisper or a glance, and it means so much more. There could be a story told just through dialogue, just through somebody saying, call me by your name, and I'll call you by mine. You know, it's kind of these beautiful little moments that are like poetry with these two talking. It's great to see a movie where people are intelligent, they're cultured. It's great to see a movie in a location that we don't get to see typically. It's great to see a gay romance film that doesn't introduce this evil world. And this is like, I mean, AIDS is about to blow up, and a lot of stuff's about to go down. And this film acts as if there's no stress in the world with that stuff. It's very... And I like that about it. I don't think it would have been as good had there been some negativity in here, because we rarely get to see this relationship develop and be consensual and be more romantic, because nobody's trying to stop it. There's always a hint there that you could tell that they would the reason they're fighting this so much is because they're worried about if anyone would accept it. In particular, just not just that, the age difference between them. They're really not from the same place. I mean, they're both Jewish, but they're kind of different. They have different lives, and it probably wouldn't work out. And would they like each other if they hung out more? Is it just because it's so exciting and fun, and because you're at such a romantic location? I mean, you could see yourself falling in love when you watch this movie. It really gets under your skin. It's so relaxing. But here's my issue. Like I said, the first hour, perfect. No issues there. But while I think he had too much of a good thing, he just repeats himself too much. Unfortunately, he goes for full-on masterpiece and makes a film that should be at the longest, and I mean this film at the longest should be 105 minutes. Maybe 106, 108. This movie should not be 2 hours, let alone 2 hours and 12 minutes. This film is too long, and I'm not saying that because it bored me or that, oh, I didn't like the quiet parts. I love that stuff. You get it. The first hour does such a good job of establishing all the stuff that you get it, and there's just too many scenes of them laying around with the sun on them. There's too many scenes of them riding the bikes around and not talking. There's too many moments that don't have a payoff later. It makes the film lack a tightness. Like, it just feels like it meanders a bit in the second act before it picks up again in the last, 20 minutes, maybe even the last 15 minutes. So you have a first hour that's a 10, and then you have a finale that's amazing and transcends and takes the film to a new dimension. But unfortunately with that second act, you're just repeating a lot of the stuff that's already been established. And like I said, a lot of the promise that's set up, like the challenging this game between the two of them, like they're going to do these sexual things with each other, like they're going to do these really weird, almost kind of gross things that just to try him out and feel them, and Armie Hammer kind of introducing him to this stuff. I thought it was going to get a little bit more interesting with that, with the psychology of it, and where they were going with Chalamet's character, and it didn't really go there. And then I thought, well, maybe they're going to a place of there's deception here. Maybe Oliver's character isn't telling the whole truth. Is he bisexual? Is he actually straight and he doesn't really know what's going on? He just likes to... I mean, it's really weird to interpret that character. I'm not kidding. He's hard to interpret for a while. You don't... Elio can't get a read on the guy. It's like, who is this guy? Because he just... It's like he's into women, but he's not into women, because when you try to say something to him, like, hey, that girl's, she likes you, she'll probably get with you, and then he's like, don't tell me to do that, and it's like, okay. He doesn't really like to let people in. He's really shy. But I like that. I like that dynamic. I just felt like Oliver didn't feel like a real character by the end, while Elio did. He felt like a three-dimensional character, and I totally got him at the end. I really didn't get Oliver even at the end at the phone conversation, and I just wish I had, because I think it hurts this movie from having more impact on me. I just wanted a little bit more with him, at least knowing what he overall represented a little bit more. I feel like that was cut a little bit short in the movie. It felt like it was between the two of them, and it was a two actors movie, but now in retrospect it just felt like really it was all about Elio's character and not Oliver and Elio's relationship. But like I said, it just meanders. There's too many scenes of them walking around or doing something, and they're not really adding anything, because you've already gotten this information. You already know where it's going. And the tone gets you, it really, you get absorbed into it. You love it so much, and you embrace it, but there's just a point you get tired of it. It's like there's too much sitting around. It's like you could sit out in front of the sun for a couple hours, on a vacation, but you don't want to be out there for 6 hours. You're going to get bored after a point. That's how this kind of starts to go. All right, can we move this along to the next stage of the narrative? Can the structure kind of bring it around? This film kind of sort of... I like it, the structure and concept, but I think if he had cut a good 15, 20 minutes, honestly, if not more, the film could have been tighter with that structure, so the emotional payoff would have been there more. But because it's such a long movie that it's over 2 hours, you really have to be patient with it to get to that place that you want to get to. And I think that's a detriment to the film. I think if to go back to Romer, he would make long movies, but he would at least fill it with enough content that a lot of those things always felt necessary. I don't feel like a lot of these scenes in this movie were necessary. I thought there was a lot of unnecessary scenes. All good scenes. Like I said, he knew he had something good here. The place they're shooting, what they have going on here, the chemistry, it's awesome. But it's like he fell in love with it, and he couldn't be more objective about putting the movie together. He just wanted to keep all this great stuff they got. And that's the problem when you're making something like this. You have to even get rid of some of the stuff that's really great, some beautiful shot you have. So that's my biggest issue with the movie. I think that hurts the movie a lot. I kind of tuned out for a while, like 20 minutes for the movie. I was just kind of tuned out and just going through the motions. I wasn't bored, like I said. I was just kind of out. Then it got me back in again and engaged. But because of that lull, unfortunately, my arbitrary rating for this film, instead of a 10 out of 10, which I thought I was going to give it, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Which I know seems like, wow, you knocked quite a bit down, but I just can't forgive that. It's too long in the middle. A lot of those scenes don't really add anything, in my opinion, and I think the movie would be stronger as a shorter film, because I think they had it. They have a masterpiece. There's a masterpiece inside this great movie. But with the soundtrack, Michael Schulberg's speech at the end, which gives the whole movie more depth and kind of saves everything that I was having issues with, it made me love the movie again. The final shot, even the font they use, everything in this, all terrific. Great movie. One of the best of the year by far. In a year that I haven't been too happy with, this is one of the films that actually met the hype for me. And I was really impressed overall. I think this deserves several Academy Award nominations. I think it should absolutely win Best Original Song. I mean, God, I wouldn't even know which one to give it to. Vision of Gideon or Mystery Love. I think it's Mystery of Love. I mean, all the songs are so good. So, yeah, Call Me By Your Name. It's a film I struggle with. And I'm having issues with if certain parts of it. And like I said, figuring out that Oliver character and almost how too self-centered he was kind of bothering me at a point. At least my interpretation of it. I've only seen the film once. But it is a film I want to see again. And the fact that I'm replaying it in my mind so much and thinking about certain aspects of it and what they meant and how I felt about certain things just shows how good of a movie it really was, because I'm not finished with it, you know? It's not a done for me. I'm still playing the movie in my head, and I haven't made, like, my final conclusion on it. I really don't know how I totally feel about this movie. I don't know if this is a movie that I'm going to love and watch 12 more times, or if it's a movie that I'm going to watch a couple more times and then never watch again. Because I don't know if I already got everything I need from it this first time. I don't know how to hold up or repeat viewings. But I do want to see it again just to see if I missed some things. And just for Chalamet's performance, which I did love. And like I said, the confidence of it. And just how commanding he was. And all the choices he made were so intelligent. And the movie goes out of its way to be true to human behavior and the psychology of human beings. So the things that characters say or do in this movie feel very real to what humans do. And that's honestly probably the thing that really works with it. That's the genius stroke of the whole story. I don't know if that element was in the book or not, but that's kind of the whole genius stroke of the screenplay and everything, is the way they approach the material as opposed to the material itself. It's decent material, but it's the approach to it that makes it feel fresh and new and makes it stand out and makes it a great film. Because nobody's really made a movie like this in this way. And even if you have seen films that are similar to this, this is original enough with some of the specific choices. It's a movie of a lot of detail, and the detail is what puts it over the top, to not just be not just a film that, because like I've seen a lot of movies like this, I really have. You know, this is your movie where a kid falls in love over summer. This is Summer of 42. I mean, that's what this is. But this is Summer of 42 with a new point of view and a new way of kind of looking at the world and a new kind of... It's the same kind of message you get from those movies, but it's done with a wisdom that is really... that I found at the end was profound. Profound enough to make this a film that was... above any of its fallings, or maybe even just its simplicity. Maybe that it's too simple of a film, that it could have a little bit more of a story or just plot in general. But the film itself as an accomplishment of being a visceral experience and a cinematic experience, I thought was... it was the kind of stuff that I go to see movies for. It's the kind of stuff that I love about movies, is when I get lost in the world for a little bit and I kind of forget I'm watching a movie. And that's how it felt to me in the best parts of this movie, because you don't realize how great and realistic the acting is until it's over. And then you go, wow, they did all that stuff so seamlessly. Like, it went by like it was nothing. So, wonderful movie. Highly recommend it when it comes to your area. and we'll see how it performs at the Academy Awards and all that. So thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.